Why is it that when we take trips and spend time in nature outside of our everyday lives that we experience the feeling of timelessness and awe, or some might describe as feeling alive? How can we infuse the same feeling into our everyday lives? And in today's video, I want to share that experience to contrast between feeling overwhelmed and the clarity that comes when you strip life down to the essentials. Do you ever feel like life is moving too fast, like you're constantly caught up in tasks, barely pausing to breathe? Lately, I felt exactly that. My days are packed, my calendar is full, and I've been running on autopilot. I always have something to do, especially with trying to stay consistent with this channel and building up content. But I do not want to live like this. That reminded me of the time I lived off-grid in the middle of the desert, a place where time feels slower, where nature reminds you to just be. Also very timely, I found a book that I resonate with and am reading at the moment to get some new ideas, one that makes me remember to take a step back and remember the finiteness of life. Welcome to my home for the next 5 days. It's a converted bus situated in an off-grid Ecolodge in the middle of nowhere in the desert. We are so far away from people and it's so peaceful here. Every day was simple. Firstly, I wake up gently every morning to the sound of bird songs and the sunlight shining on my face. Each day, I set aside time to complete 3 hours of woodworking and general upkeep and maintenance of the lodge, and other than that, I was free to go about my own business. I took my time to cook, to eat, to read, and hang in my hammock, and to enjoy the gorgeous sunsets every evening without a care in the world. When night falls, the sky is dappled with so many little stars. It has become sort of a little tradition for me to pick and choose my own adventure and be away in the last 2 weeks of the year so that I can reflect on how the year has been and have a reset so that I can go into the new year recharged. It's so valuable and impactful to intentionally get away from the hectic rhythm of typical day-to-day life. When I'm here, I want to be able to relax, learn what living off-grid is about, and just live simply. To be able to reduce my time online and set aside some quiet time to reflect and to just be without any plans for the day. It's like you can see the sunset over the ocean. Wow. And the sun's gone. It's super fast. Lucky for me, I found a Workaway experience in Baja California where I spent a week diving and carb camping. I found Workaway experiences to be extremely fulfilling and was lucky to be given the chance to work my creative juices and put my woodworking skills to work. I love having the freedom and space to build something and see creative visions come to life. It's also a great opportunity to experience living in unique and unconventional places while meeting locals and experiencing a place in a more authentic and less touristic way. This off-grid Ecolodge sits deep in the desert, so remote that its location is shared via coordinates instead of an address. Surrounded by nature, yet just a 15-minute drive from the pass, the property features 2 other converted buses, the owner's kitchen, and a building with an underground space. It runs on solar power, limited water, and dry composting toilets. The goal is to make each bus a self-sufficient home with its own shower, toilet, and outdoor kitchen using repurposed and upcycled materials wherever possible. The initial plan was to work on getting a toilet done for the space underground, but as we had to work with the materials we currently have, it was better that we work together on a different project. But I did spend some time thinking about the different options we could to have the toilet come together and also built a 3D model on it, which was going to be useful anyhow in the future for the crew to visualize how the build was going to turn out. Hence, we decided to continue working on turning the converted bus into a more equipped off-grid getaway and built on the outdoor kitchen and dining area extension instead. Vision is there'll be the sink here with the gas stove on this side, cooking this way, and there will be like a little wall covering, partitioning between the stove and the sitting area. And there will also be something to block the wind coming from this direction and this direction. This is our little dining area, and just picked out like the pellet pieces for a small table that's gonna extend from there to this side. Now we're gonna cut it and assemble it. Now we're gonna try to pick the wood and see which materials we're gonna use. I've been trying to get to the essence of what makes such a getaway on the Ecolodge feel so freeing and liberating. It's not just the lack of people or the quietness. There's this book that I'm currently reading that I would love to share. It's about how we perceive time and why we constantly feel like we don't have enough of it. Let me read some excerpts of it for you. Here goes. The real problem isn't our limited time. The real problem is that we've unwittingly inherited and feel pressured to live by a troublesome set of ideas about how to use our limited time. Let's talk about the time before timetable. Though death was a constant presence then as well, with lives cut short far more frequently than they are today, time wouldn't have felt in limited supply. You wouldn't have felt any pressure to find ways to save it, nor would you have felt guilty for wasting it. Imagine each hour or week or year as a container being carried on the conveyor belt, which we must fill as it passes if we are to feel that we are making good use of our time. When there are too many activities to fit comfortably into the containers, we feel unpleasantly busy. But when there are too few, we feel bored. If we keep pace, we congratulate ourselves for staying on top of things and feel like we are justifying our existence. And if we use the containers labeled work for leisure instead, our employer may grow irritated. The medieval farmer simply had no reason to adopt such a bizarre idea in the first place. You milked the cows when they needed milking and harvested crops when it was harvest time. Anyone who tried to impose an external schedule on any of that would have been considered lunatic. There was no anxious pressure to get everything done because a farmer's work is infinite. Historians call this way of living task orientation because the rhythms of life emerge organically from the task themselves. Living this way, one can imagine that experience would have felt expansive and fluid, suffused with something it might not be an exaggeration to call a kind of magic. Untroubled by any notion of time ticking away, he might have experienced a heightened awareness of the vividness of things and the feeling of timelessness. It's called living in deep time. Instead of trying to control every minute, what if we let it flow a little more naturally? One line that really stuck with me was, instead of thinking about what you haven't done, think about what you have done instead today. I love that perspective, and I'm still making the way through the book, but I'm really curious to see what else the author has to say about finding meaning in the fact that our time on Earth is limited. Speaking of task orientation, one of the most hands-on experience out here is dealing with the dry compost toilet. It's definitely not the most glamorous part of off-grid living, but it's a reminder that everything here is part of a cycle and that nothing goes to waste. So let's go take care of that now. Living off-grid was impactful in getting me back to the idea of living simply and being intentional with resources. Out here, everything had a purpose, and we had to be mindful of what we used, as well as to live in harmony with the environment and nature. For example, we stored food in boxes to keep it safe from mice. Since we are off-grid and living in the desert, water is very precious and every drop counts. Changes to my lifestyle was made. I didn't shower every day, and when I did, I was mindful of how much water I used, whether it was for washing dishes, brushing my teeth, or just cooking. I actually surprised myself at how much less water I can actually use to perform these tasks as compared to back home, and that was a rather important lesson that I took away. With the property being solar powered, electricity shut off every day at 4 p.m, so I learned to be savvy and I unplugged devices, charged only what was necessary, and made the most of the solar power available.
Electricity here doesn't turn on until I think 9 a.m. and it shuts down at around 4 to 5 p.m. So that's another feature.
Even gas was something that we had to think about. For example, we covered the pots and pans to cook more efficiently and to avoid wastage. While these little habits might seem small, but they sure add up. They make you realize just how much we take for granted in daily life and how much more intentional we can be. I enjoyed the lifestyle and the sustainability principles that was embodied and practiced. It was very precious to realize that living simply isn't just about doing less, but in fact, it's about doing things with more awareness and intention.